a sophisticated chain of independence, things that took place. This is a clear indication, as you will see. This apparent reality is visible even in his personal appearance. His attire of contemporary military fatigue and traditional Arab garments speaks neatly to his contradiction. Now his outfit reflects the global fragmentation, a form of cross-fertilization referred to in global studies as hybridization. The mixing of different cultural forms and tastes facilitated by global economic and cultural changes. Now, and the stylish sport watch, look at his hands. Look at the stylish sport watch he's putting on right there. As he condemns the United States and its allies at his handheld microphone, his retreating sleeve exposes this watch, probably a Timex product that is as American as an apple pie will be. Now, this contradiction shows how complex the struggle by Al-Qaeda could be, how contradictory it could be to these people who tend to want to place a holy jihad to the rest of the world. Now, I will just conclude here by saying that Africa is a weak link in the global war against terrorism. In the age of globalization, it is very crucial that we pay attention to some of these weak spots, because we are living in a world that is much more complex than it was some 30, 40, 50 years ago. I'll give you some very recent example. A pastor in a small congregation in Florida just last month only threatened to burn the Quran. Now, as cable news is broadcasting that piece of information here in the United States, it is being watched in Kabul at the same time. It is being watched in Kabul in Afghanistan, it is watched in Somalia, and Muslims are already on the street. Less than 2 hours that the man got the news to the air. Now, we are living in a world that is much more challenging, and it's important to maybe pay more attention to these weak links in the global war against what we call Muslim extremists. I'm trying to keep to the timing so that we can have some exchanges in terms of questions and answers. So I'd like to stop at this point, and if you have some questions or some ideas, you have the floor to. Yes, sir.
Why do you think Africa, as you say, I'm quoting what you said, why do you think Africa is the weak link in terms of terrorism?
Africa is a weak link because Africa has what they call weak states. Africa has failed states. Now, when a country cannot take care of its space, that creates a weak link. That country becomes a fertile ground for extremists who sneak in like they did in East Africa in the late 90s and join NGOs or what they call non-profit out here. Now they join the ranks and they turn around and they mobilize people, they mobilize other younger extremists, and then they use them to create what they want to get. So Africa is a weak link because of the failed state, because of the poverty, because of the general atmosphere of carefree that you have out there. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
You said that in the pre-colonial continent there were as many as 10,000 different polities.
Right.
That today the plurality of population of the continent practices Islam. And you mentioned so many attacks. It seemed that these are attacks by Muslims upon Muslims. To what extent can we attribute this to the distortion of the traditional African map as a result of colonialism? I guess to synthesize the question, how much of this can be blamed on European colonialism?
Well, I will link this to the arbitrary manner in which European colonizers divided Africa. The 1884 Berlin Conference in Germany had a one-item agenda, actually. European powers went to Africa. They realized that there was going to be conflict amongst them in the course of, taking different part of the continent for themselves. So Otto von Bismarck, the then German Chancellor, convened a conference in Berlin, 1884. They met and decided and carved out a strategy that will not bring conflict while they are partitioning Africa for themselves in different parts of the continent. So that in a very large extent account for the weak state that we have in Africa. The weak state, the failed state, or the rogue state, and we can associate them in different. Somalia is a good example of a rogue state. There's no real government in place. All right, there's anybody does anything. You have different groups of cartels. You have different groups of armies, I should say, and you have a government that a U.S.-backed government that is not recognized by anybody. This also accounts for the occasional piracy that you have toward that coastal area there. There's nobody who is in charge. That's a good example of a rogue state. Now there are so many weak states. Cameroon, my country, is a weak state. It's only a potential bombshell. At any time, anything can happen. Our president, Paul Biya, has been in power for 28 years. And he's planning to run again next year as president of the republic. But these are weak states, basically. And these are soft spots for Islamic extremists. Because when they get in, they will come in, they are very, in terms of relationship, they are very good, they are very nice, they are very calm and gentle. They will come in, they will cajole you, they will establish some non-profit, helping the people. One good example of how easy it is for them to get into the fabric of society is what happened in Somalia. When the US bombed Somalia, some part of Somalia last year, I think, because they thought that one of the Al-Qaeda operatives was hanging in somewhere there. People in the street were marching against the United States government because they saw the person as their own person who has come to help. So it's really kind of much more complex.
I got another.
Yes, sir.
Just to follow up on what the professor was saying, I've lived in Africa for a while. I lived in Ethiopia during the 70s. And that time you had the Soviets and you had the Americans, and they were fighting a proxy war. So coming back to his statement, when I think of Somalia today, I think of the United States and Russia planting these seeds because these people was confused. There was a lot of things going on, and I think the United States and Russia should support this country to build it back up, because that's why it is the way it is today. If you look back in the 70s,
right,
and you look today, it was us and the Russians fighting a proxy war using Somalians and Ethiopians.
Okay, I will answer that in a very holistic way. The so-called independence, most African countries have been celebrating their independence the last couple of months, 50 years to independence. But if you look at it at a deeper level, there's no such thing as real independence. Most of these countries still depend solely on their former colonial masters.
Yes.
And so it becomes difficult to really talk about real independence when you cannot decide how much you want to sell the cocoa that you produce in Cameroon, for example.
Right.
Now, they produce cash crops, they do a lot of things, but the West decide how much they want to pay for how much of what they produce. So somewhere, somehow, there needs to be some real, I don't know what to call it, sincerity, I don't know what that word exists in diplomacy, but there needs to be some genuine concern by the West to effectively make Africa get out of the long-standing economic repercussion.
Right. Now,
yes, sir, go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but in studying my studying of the issues that I've seen going on in Africa, besides the terrorist attacks and whatnot that have happened within the last decade or so, that I've read some material that proposed sending aid to different countries and whatnot, but from what I've also seen and read through military reports of what's happened, especially with the U.S. government's military support into trying to help help certain countries out, either financially or with any kind of aid they can, that the militant groups that have seized certain control, certain power of over those territories get, I don't want to say become afraid of losing it, but more or less they feel threatened by the idea of somebody coming in and doing something good for that country and taking away from them. They in turn use their means and whatnot to take back control of that. Would that be in turn looking at the idea of its own internal terrorism inside those countries, keeping it from being able to progress forward?
Right.
I like to say those groups, those rebel groups in Africa, where do they get their arms from?
Same place anybody gets them from.
From America.
The arms is coming from the very West.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the story of Eduardo dos Santos in Angola, way back in the 70s and the 80s. Now, two great powers are sponsoring two different parties in an African country. This is where some of the real problems are. I don't think Africa has the capacity to produce ammunition back out there. But you have these cartels, but sometimes they have very sophisticated weapons. They get it from the West, and sometimes legitimate government in the West actually back rebel groups in Africa for their own ulterior motives. I just showed how much resources we have in Africa. You'll be surprised how much is sneaked out, even unofficially, to different countries at different times. So there's this double standard by the Western powers, which, if not taken care of, is going to be a very difficult thing for Africa to get out of the doldrum. I would like to add quickly that according to development economists, William Easterly is in Harvard. He's done a lot of studies in Africa. He's a development economist. He corroborated Sachs, the other guy I quoted before, that $2.3 trillion have been disbursed in Africa over the last 50 years as aid from the West. Now, another economist in Oxford, Paul Collier, he published a book not too long ago, 2009, I think. The title is The Bottom Billion. He argues in the text that he brought statistics that of the aid that go to Africa to help poor people, about 60% is sent back to Swiss bank by leaders in Africa. And about 30% is used to buy arms. So you have an oligarchy in the different powers in Africa who want to cling to power. They do all they can and they don't care about who is down there. And this who is down there who are suffering, they are the fodder, they are the food, if you want, for terrorists who can easily recruit them. Look at this gentleman, the young 23-year-old Nigerian. It's just by a little margin that we missed having a disaster in this country last year because of some of those external issues that we're talking about. That was a virtual WMD flying from Detroit, from Amsterdam to Detroit last year. Yes, sir.
Yeah, since a lot of the problems in Africa, a lot of times are attributed to, the West, are there any countries in Africa with or of themselves that are on the forefront of defending against terrorism and stopping, these terrorists from harboring, within their borders? I mean, what countries are on the forefront? They might not have achieved it fully, but what countries would you say are standing out and actively dealing with this problem?
Okay, I think two countries come to mind. You have South Africa, which is a relatively more stable country. You have Botswana. For the last 50 years, Botswana has never had the kind of abject poverty that you have in Africa. The reason is simple. Upon taking power, the first president and the first leadership, they actually took a decision, and they had that real patriotic spirit in them, and they laid down a foundation in Botswana. That Botswana is the most developed African country by some estimation, actually. Now, a country like that, directly or indirectly, they help to curtail the degree to which extremists can explore and exploit Africa. Of course, South Africa is a much more advanced country, although there's still poverty in some part, but it's a much more credible country. And just the fact that there's a country that is out of that and is strong economically is enough to, effect some little change in the directly or indirectly toward curbing extremism, if you want. Yes, Dr.
Yeah, you included the pretty recent